Welcome back into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner, talking more about the number 16 now ranked Fighting Illini, because the college football playoff rankings now supersede what the AP Top 25, the coaches poll because that's the one that matters. How much does it matter today? Not that much, because you still got 4 games coming up. But Joey Wagner, you are back on the pod. You are invited back on the pod. And I want to get into something really simple about Illinois football, but they are ranked in the college football playoff rankings. They are 2 wins away from clinching a Big Ten West championship. What a ride it has been the last 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, I know we can get into this game coming up later, but just to for a reference point to the ride, Jeremy, it was like, what do you think? Maybe late July, early August, as we were breaking down the schedule. It wasn't that long ago that I was like, Michigan State's probably a no-go. That's probably not a game that we would pick Illinois to win in. Flash forward a few months, I think we're picking a 2-score victory over Michigan State, not to spoil anything. And Illinois
17-point favorites. They are 17-point favorites against Michigan State. I did not see either of those things for either program. I expected regression for Michigan State. I thought Illinois had a chance to compete and win this game at home. I did not think they would be 17-point favorites against the Spartans. And yes, we will get into a preview of this game.
Which brings me into my next question. What the heck is the spread going to be for Northwestern?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my God.
That's going to be the biggest ever. I got to find my Phil Steele book over here around my desk somewhere, because it has the last 5 years of, point spreads for Illinois. I don't know if Illinois has been a 20-plus favorite against a group of 5 team, Joey, let alone Power 5 Big Ten.
What was the spread against Chattanooga? What did that ultimately end up being?
13?
Good God, Illinois is okay, but that in a weird way, Jeremy, that all ties back to what we started with. Is what a ride this has been for the Illinois football team. Even a month ago, they were favored by 13 over freaking Chattanooga, and it's fine. I understand Chattanooga's a good FCS team, but now there's 17.
Chattanooga might beat Northwestern at this point.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do. Hello, Miami, Ohio. But now you're 17.5 over a Big Ten team that was the belle of the ball coming in. Definitely last season. I think, to your point, there was some regression. But, dude, it was weird watching the college football playoff rankings. Oh, this is work now. I opened Twitter and everyone's yelling and screaming. It's TCU got scrutiny. Any number of things. I'm like, what? I used to pay attention to this because I had nothing else to do during this hour of time. And now I'm like, who said? I could not tell you who 4 through 7 are right now. I have no earthly idea.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Joey. I hate these shows. I really don't like them.
They're money grabs.
Oh, absolutely. And I get it. They should come out on Sunday, right? But they come out on Tuesday because ESPN needs programming. It gets great rankings. I have to watch because it's now my job to have to watch. I don't really like these shows, but it is fun fodder for college football. So I totally get this. But I know our boy Trevor Valise said, if you are complaining about this ranking, what are you doing? Illinois is in here. And listen, Penn State is 1 spot above Illinois. I think they're on the same tier of the Big Ten. I think it's Ohio State, Michigan, and then Illinois and Penn State.
Say that one more time. Just say that one more time.
Ohio State, Michigan, and then Illinois and Penn State. That is the tiers of the Big Ten. I'm interested to see if Illinois can contend with Michigan. I don't think they can against Ohio State for 60 minutes. I just think Ohio State has too much firepower, but they might have that opportunity coming up, right? So maybe we'll see. But Penn State has the number 8 strength of schedule in the country. Penn State was just leading Ohio State in the 4th quarter of a football game. Illinois' best win is Wisconsin, who's 4-4. Right? So I get it. Penn State has 1 more loss, but those losses are to Michigan and Ohio State. So I get the ranking. The eye test, I think Illinois in a neutral field would probably be 2-point favorites, in my opinion, against them. I think they have more talent on defense. I think they're better in the trenches. I think their quarterback might be playing better. He takes care of the ball better. And while Penn State's got good running backs, Chase Brown is better. So I think it'd be a phenomenal game. It doesn't matter right now because Illinois will have a chance to play Michigan. They'll have a chance to beat Purdue, which is probably Penn State's best win, right? Week 1. Auburn was a good win for them, no matter what you think of Auburn. Crushing an SEC team on the road like that is impressive. So Illinois will have its chances because they got the number 6 schedule left, I think, in the country with Michigan and Purdue on it. Michigan State obviously is not an easy opponent, but worse than we thought. It'll all take care of itself. If Illinois beats Michigan and beats Purdue and has a chance to go 10-2 by the end of the year, I think they can leap Penn State, right? Maybe they leap Penn State just by crushing Purdue, and they have that win that Penn State doesn't. Either way, if Illinois wants to make the college football playoff, it has to win out. It has to beat Ohio State in the championship game or Michigan twice. It's a great place to be that we can talk about a path to a college football playoff, a path to a New Year's Six bowl here, Joey.
Yeah, right now, is that what it is right now? For me right now, it's can you just jump Penn State and be the 3rd most attractive Big Ten team in a bowl game?
Maybe we're setting the bar too low because that's what we did before in the season. But yes, like that is the goal right now, I think, is one, you want to win every game. You want to win a Big Ten championship. You want to beat Ohio State, get to the college football playoff. But if I'm a fan, yeah, how can they leap Penn State in case Michigan and Ohio State both get in the playoff? You are the chance to get into that New Year's Six bowl. Even if it's going 10-2 and you and Michigan both get in, one in the Orange Bowl, one in the Rose Bowl, yeah, that should be a total goal for Illinois because if they go 10-2, win the West, might have a chance to finish in the top 12 there.
Can we talk about like the doomsday? Not the doomsday. I don't want to put it like that, but like the crazy scenario that Illinois just runs this thing through all the way towards Indianapolis, that they win the Big Ten championship, and then just imagine, Jeremy, the chaos, agent of chaos here. 1 loss Ohio State, 1 loss Illinois. Illinois with the recent head-to-head win over Ohio State, Michigan, Purdue. Chaos.
Illinois is in over Ohio State.
God, I can't
They
believe
beat
we're
them
talking
head-to-head.
about this.
If you beat them head-to-head,
Yeah, I don't. But like, there's going to be so. I can't believe we're wasting people's time having this discussion. There's going to be so much like, but yeah, it's fair. Like, there's going to be so much of like national thought of like fighting the perception of Illinois versus like Ohio. It's that is interesting conversation. But to me, win the West, jump Purdue or jump Penn State, and see what the heck happens from there. Like, because I think those are two very attainable things, if not likely to win the West, and then go from there. But just if you can get into a New Year's Six bowl, dude, come on. Hey, come on. We thought they might lose to Michigan State 3 months ago.
Doesn't happen very often in this program, right? 3 times that they've done that since 1984. Or 2 times. Sorry, this would be the 3rd time. All right, this is what I wanted to start with, Joey. It's very simple, very general. Like Illinois is legit good. I've gone on a fucking Michigan State shows and they've said, "How good is Illinois?" And I said, I get the question because the strength of schedule is not great. Again, their best win is probably Wisconsin. I think that's going to end up, of the wins they have so far, the best win, because I think Wisconsin's a pretty good team that's had a tough schedule and lost to Illinois, right? So I think Wisconsin will end up a pretty good win for Illinois. Purdue could end up a very good win for Illinois. But the way they're doing it, Joey, like they are outscoring opponents, 208-71 so far this season. They are dominating in the trenches. They are running the football. They are passing the ball efficiently. They obviously have the number 1 defense in the country. We'll see how that sustains against a passing offense in Michigan State, passing offense in Purdue. But I liked what they did against a passing offense that Nebraska has. And then, of course, Michigan's a different style. Wisconsin on steroids right now with the way they play physically on offense. But this team's legit good. Against Penn State, again, I think they would be a pick 'em or potentially a favorite based on what I've seen with the eye test against traditionally really good Big Ten teams in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. So I don't find anything fluky about this. Like 2019, you could find fluky things about that 4-game win streak. The Michigan State game, everything went right. That could go right in the second half. Wisconsin, everything that could go right in that 4th quarter went right. You got the rain in Purdue, right? But this one doesn't feel nearly as fluky. They are winning in the trenches and they are winning with their game management and efficiency, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we said it in Madison, right? When we were just trying to dissect what that win was, Illinois was just playing good football. they're playing good football because they are a good football team. Those two don't always pair up, I don't think. I think you can 2019, I think they were playing elements of good football. I don't know they were necessarily a good football team.
Well, like
I
Minnesota was playing good football early against bad football teams. Like
Right.
Illinois playing really good football against mediocre Big Ten teams.
Yeah, and you wrote about this today, but I think the point that like would hold, like I always use the analogy, like you're walking through the college football neighborhood, like what would hold you back from stopping and staring at the Illinois house is like maybe the points aren't as skewed one way. Like to your point, Michigan or Minnesota was earlier, you're just blowing through teams. Illinois is doing that in a lot of ways, but not in the point way. And I know you wrote about it. Kind of some of that's by design in the fourth quarter to let your foot off the gas a little bit and know what your defense is. And we've talked about the red zone issues, but I think if you're not taking your foot off the gas offensively a little bit, if you punch in those red zone issues, then the yardage numbers, the time of possession numbers, the turnovers numbers, all the things that you can look at and say, wow, that's pretty striking, the difference between Illinois and its opponents. That's when I think you'd be like, holy smokes, like this is
Yeah.
they're doing exactly what they mean. It's just it so happens that the margin of victory hasn't always been like Illinois beat a team what to what now? Like that's just not happened in a lot of ways this year.
But still, a 12-point victory over Minnesota is not nothing.
Right.
Like a 19-point victory over Nebraska. Yeah, the offensive numbers, like I think if you had said before the season, Illinois is going to score 5 more points a game, 6 more points a game, you'd be like, okay, that's a big leap. Like they're going to make a bowl game. But the way they're doing it, the way they're controlling the clock, and I wrote about this, the second half dominance of this team is just striking. They're outscoring opponents 83-17 in the second half. And I wrote a big story about this. The coaches were great about it. But the halftime adjustments thing, Ryan Walters thinks is real. Kevin Kane is the eye in the sky. The players giving them feedback on the sidelines. Andy Boo, who's been a defensive coordinator, Aaron Henry and Terrence Jamison all playing a role, and Ryan Walters coordinating it. But he says those 20 minutes at halftime where we can make adjustments are huge because teams have had some success early against Illinois. Wisconsin's first drive, easy touchdown, right? We go back to what Nebraska did. 3 of the first 4 drives, if it weren't for that interception by Quan Martin, a bad pass by Casey Thompson, and a good play by Quan, they were driving right there. And they saw some things in their scout that they were able to execute. But those things don't last. And the defense just absolutely dominates in the second half. And one of the touchdowns they gave up, Joey, was after that kick return. It was 1 play, 4-yard drive. So, like, really, it's basically 10 points they've given up in the second half. And the offense deserves some credit from that, though, right? The defense has no doubt been dominant. But when you're on the field for 95 of 240 minutes as a defense, you're not going to give up very many points. Like, Illinois has been able to milk away that clock. They still get aggressive on third downs. They still are able to convert and move the ball. But the way they've been able to run the ball when teams know they're going to run in the second half has been very impressive. And kudos to Barry Loney Jr. He's not going, hey, I need to show why I'm here in the stats. Like I need to score more than 30, or I need to do this and this. He's just doing what he needs to do to help win games with a dominant defense. Sometimes when you have a lead in the second half, which they've had a lead, they haven't been trailing going into the fourth quarter in a game yet. Even against Indiana, they were up 1 there, right? So they haven't had that moment yet. They're probably going to have it at some point where you have to get aggressive, all those things. But the way they're playing complementary football, the way offense is moving the ball, running the ball, churning the clock, and not turning it over has been very impressive. Since that Indiana game, they had 3 turnovers in the second half, Joey. They have 2 turnovers in the final 6 second halves of the season so far.
Yeah, I agree with you. Barry Lundy could easily have felt pressure to come in, and because we've talked about what I don't say rides on the season, but what's entwined, like some of the recruiting pitches, like what's entwined in this year. But also kudos to Tommy DeVito. Like there are RPO options based in there. And he could, I don't know if this is the right word, he can get like bored. Sure,
Rex Grossman. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's
Casey
not like
he's
staying within the framework and it's working. And I get it. It's maybe not always the most like the sexiest thing to watch, and the stats don't always, the score I should say doesn't always.
No, it's sexy wins.
It's going to look pretty. Those wins are going to
Because
look pretty good in a lot of bank accounts in the Smith Center soon.
because Barry and Brett and their whole thing is if we turn it over, right, and put our guys in a bad spot like this, special teams put them in a bad spot at the beginning of that half against Minnesota, all of a sudden it's a different game. It's a completely different game. Maybe you lose one of those and you have a meltdown like we've seen so many years past with Illinois.
Yeah, it's what it takes to win. And some of that, they didn't say this, but I'm just thinking out loud, is there's still not the biggest margin for error on this team, right? Like if you do that, you turn it over, it's just know where you got, man. Just be who you are. And right now, all that matters in year two, because like I don't think this is a stretch to say that I don't think you and I expect to be covering a college football playoff game in January. Like I'm not trying to.
And that is not my expectation. I would love to. It is not my expectation.
Yeah. So the expectation is if you're not trying to sexy up your numbers or what you look like to get into that, the expectation is stack the wins and win the West. And this is the way to do that. It's interesting. It is interesting, but it works, right? Like it is crazy that everyone knows Chase Brown's getting the ball. I'm really interested to see how much Josh McCray plays this week. I think we were kind of, I don't know, led astray or gone astray last week, but they know Chase Brown's running the ball. Chase Brown still runs the ball and gets the numbers to try to get himself to New York. That's what it is. It's just a really interesting approach, Jeremy, but it's not quite Bielema ball.
Yeah, he's been more aggressive this year,
Yeah.
right? I don't think Illinois has not been aggressive. They're just not as aggressive when they have a 2-score lead, right? Like, and they've had a 2-score lead a lot in the second.
And that's not, look, dude, come on. This isn't also like an anomaly either, right? Like a lot of teams get a 2-score lead with the defense. It's like, you stay healthy, you avoid injury. Do
as
what you
Brett said,
do.
I didn't think Minnesota could score 2 touchdowns on our guys. I didn't think Nebraska could score 2 touchdowns on our guys with Chubba Purdy in the game. Like, he didn't say Chubba Purdy, but we know, like, that's a smart thing to do. And they milked away that game. They've had the ball in the fourth quarter for 34 more minutes than the opponent, right? 34 minutes in 120 minutes of time. They've had it more 34 minutes more. Like that's insane what they've been able to do. Joe, you wrote this week as well. I asked Ryan Walters a little bit about it, but this defense, we talked about after the Nebraska game, they are playing with an edge, man. And it comes from the coaching staff. It also seems to be innate to a couple players, Devin Witherspoon, Sidney Brown, those two especially, but Quan Martin seems to have gotten the bug, just pile driving people, and the defensive front certainly has too.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said Sidney. I asked Alec Bryant. I said, look, so we talked to Keith Randolph, Johnny Newton, and Alec Bryant on Wednesday. And the pretty, I mean, it wasn't even a question, like who talks the most, and it's Devin Witherspoon. And that passes exactly what we see on the field. So I asked Alec Bryant, I said, who's the one who, if they talk, you're like, oh, okay. He goes, it's Sidney Brown. He goes, he's so dialed in, which actually fits exactly what I would think with Sidney Brown. Like, not going to talk, he just hits you. and that's how you know. Yeah.
I asked Seth Coleman after the game, because we've heard this from the coaching staff. I go, who do you want is he the guy you want in the back alley, right? Of everybody on the team? He goes, no doubt. No doubt it's Sidney Brown.
I wonder, Sidney Brown's going to be gone after this season, but it would have been fun to ask the freshman defensive players, like when you first met Sidney, he's a tremendously nice guy.
Yes.
Like when you first kind of got your on-field sense of Sidney Brown, that's kind of got to be a little jarring, right? Like he's so intense on the field, but the point is they do play with an edge. And I know watching it, like we see fans, they're like, wow, going to get a flag. It might, but it's also a lot of the reason, or part of the reason why this defense is having so much success, because they are confident. They're not afraid to express that and play with that. And they understand the scheme's good and they get the scheme, and it all plays together.
I think we saw a couple of those penalties against Indiana, right? Like you went back though and dug up the stat of the personal fouls for the defense, at least when it comes to like,
it was like 6.
Yeah.
It was 6. So they say personal foul. So is that late hit? It's just the book says 6, but I only saw 3 unsportsmanlike conduct in the book, which is interesting. Now I did go back and watch one at Wisconsin, And it was called a personal foul in the book. And when the ref said it, he said unsportsmanlike conduct. But that's not a lot over the course of 8 games. So I guess maybe it is, but when you factor in like what this defense is kind of about and the swagger, it's kind of, it comes with it a little bit, right?
Can't have it in a big moment. That's the key.
Right. That's right. Yeah. But it hasn't hurt them. Yeah. And let's be fair, one against Indiana was garbage.
That's right.
The Kendall Smith shushed the crowd, which a lot of football players have shushed crowds on the road before. I know the audacity. Imagine. So going back,
a 23-year-old man, 24-year-old man shushing a crowd. Oh gosh.
Should they retroactively have gone back and given Io the like a tech for like pumping the crowd down at Michigan when he hit that shot? I mean, that's part of that was a crappy flag, but really it's not been a lot, Jeremy. That's the point, and it all plays in. And dude, the defense is really good.
Yeah. And when you're good, you start to get national attention, some award season stuff. Gabe Ackus named today, this is Thursday, the semifinalist for the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year Award. Didn't know Sean Alexander had a Freshman of the Year Award. But
I was going to say, were you surprised to see that? I was like, what the heck? Sean Alexander was just rushing
great player
for all those touchdowns like yesterday.
Yeah. Seattle Seahawks. I remember that draft when he was drafted with Seattle. I think Seattle had 2 picks. It was Chris McIntosh and Sean Alexander. I was a draft nerd back then. But Gabe Ackus, 1 of 14. I don't get into it as much now. But Gabe Ackus, 1 of 14 freshmen, 3 Big Ten freshmen. He's tied for the lead with freshmen in sacks with 4. He has the most pressures among freshmen. I mean, you got to have a big year to go and win an award like this, but that's a heck of a statement. Chase Brown, 1 of 20 players named a semifinalist for the Maxwell Award, which is basically the Heisman's younger brother or little brother. Like it's just usually the Heisman goes to the same guy that gets the Maxwell. Devin Witherspoon and Johnny Newton, 2 of 20 semifinalists for the Bednarik Award. So Illinois has 2 guys for the nation's top defensive player award. Pretty amazing that you have 2 guys up for that award. I think the last guy up for that award was Whitney Merciless. So that's good. That's good to pub for both those guys. And I think another sign both those guys probably could make to the leap to the NFL.
Yeah, it is good pub, and that's what it comes down to. And especially, I don't know, if you're just saying like if you're recruiting a corner or a defensive lineman, that's a pretty good graphic to send out when you're texting with someone, right? Is we have 2 guys on this, and both those guys were here. Johnny Newton, not as much as Devin Witherspoon, for some crappy defenses. And they've really, like, the defense has come a long way. And those guys are a huge part of that. You're starting to see this. It's like semifinalists. It's different. Like the watch list, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But now you get into the semifinalists, like, oh dang. Yeah. Like they're right in this conversation. It's a hell of a turnaround, Jeremy. I know we've talked a lot about the defense, but to have 2 guys on that list. Maybe they win it, maybe they don't. I don't know. I don't think you and I are projecting one way or the other. But just to be in that conversation, and when you scroll down, if you're a national media member, if you're a casual fan, and I mean, there's a lot of schools that are the likely candidates, right? You're going to see Alabama, you're going to see Georgia, you're going to see, then to see Illinois twice, like what the heck?
Illinois got more guys on this list than Georgia. It's them and Alabama with 2 guys on that list.
We always knew they were on the same tier, and covering this program, Jeremy, it was very clear to us that that's how it was.
Yeah. All right, Joe, let's dive into this Michigan State matchup. Actually, before we get to that, Aiden Lawfrey, Brett Bielema gave you guys an injury update today.
Didn't say what the injury is, but he's out 4 to 6 weeks. I think he's played 1 game, Jeremy, if that's right. So I guess if, however a bowl lines up, maybe you could get him out there. Maybe that's all we see of him. But so it basically guarantees he's going to preserve a red shirt going into next season. But it's an interesting development because you and I think we had stopped probably like 2 weeks ago, kind of wondering, but he was a guy we thought could go in there and carve out a role because he's got so much speed. We thought there's different ways they could use him. So it's not a big loss in terms of production, but it's an interesting loss for just what's that look like in the running back room, especially among true freshmen. You see more Jordan Anderson. Obviously, Josh McCray's coming back. It's an interesting development there.
Yeah, it's disappointing. And the only question I had about Aiden Lawfrey coming into college was he had these kind of nagging injuries through high school. And whether that was fair or unfair, it's like, oh, he's got those kind of soft tissue kind of things. I know he had an ankle. I think he had a calf as well. It's like, can he get through those at the college level? And he's had a couple injuries here, one in camp and now here, where it's like, man. And that makes me question, like, can you bank on him? Because I think he was a guy they're really banking on next year. Now, they continue to say good things about Reggie Love, but I think we see Reggie Love isn't the most explosive guy compared to Chase Brown. Not many are. But Josh McCray is going to be one of your lead backs next year. Who's the other guy? Guys like Jordan Anderson starting to travel. I think he traveled now because Aiden didn't. Caden Fagan's coming in. I think he's going to need time to develop. Those are big guys. You need an explosive back. And I think Aiden Lawford certainly is the most explosive guy there. So I'll throw it out there, Joey. Like, I know some people have talked about this. Running back in the transfer portal, you got a heck of a sell. You're going to have a potential Heisman guy. I wouldn't be closed-minded to it. It's not your biggest need. I think you got that guys there that can be good. You got an offensive line, I think that'll be good next year. I think quarterback, defensive line, offensive line are still more important, but with no scholarship limits per class, if you got a spot, I wouldn't mind going to find an explosive running back in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be viewed as a top 5 need on this team. And I don't think you would take one just for the sake of it either.
Gotta be a great one, good one.
Right. And you've seen this happen. And I joked about it a minute ago, but I think you saw Alabama go in and get the guy from Georgia Tech last year. So I think, dude, it's a good pitch. And this isn't a one-off pitch either, right? I think that also has to factor into it as Brett Bielema has coached teams. Barry Lundy's been the OC on teams where you've had running back. So I think it's to me, if you do it, and we don't know that they're going to or not going to, it's got to be a very selective approach. And you can go, you got a really hot pitch, man. And this is as good as any pitch you have on the team.
It's as good as Michigan State's pitch was, right? This offseason with Kenneth Walker, and they went and got Jalen Berger's a former 4-star guy. Now he's had a solid year. Most of it was early. He's got a bad offensive line. Like Illinois, I don't think it's going to have a bad offensive line next year. They got question marks, but I think they're going to fill those spots. So, they also got Jarek Broussard, I think, from Colorado, who's former very highly ranked prospect. I think Illinois can get a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think, again, I wouldn't go just get the first back, and I don't think they will, that picks up and answers the phone when you call. But you're going to have a heck of a pitch to put out there and really just cherry pick, right? If you get someone outstanding, I don't know that it's like a requirement, but if you can, yeah, man, you got some options there. We'll see how it plays. It's interesting to see how that might play out.
All right, Michigan State, 3-5, 1-4 in the Big Ten, and as disappointing and as underwhelming as they've been on the field, especially during Big Ten play here. Their numbers during Big Ten play are really bad. There's a bigger deal going on at Michigan State. Mel Tucker said he didn't even watch any Illinois film as of Monday afternoon, right? So he had not that his staff didn't, right? His staff was getting plenty prepared for this game, but there's a distraction element, but there's more importantly, Joey, they have 8 players out on defense, and that's what we know so far. I don't know if there'll be any more, but some of these guys are significant contributors. Jacoby Windman leads the team with 10.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. He hasn't been as good during Big Ten play, but he's a 2-time Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week this year. Angelo Gross, their starting safety, kind of playing a nickel role. He's 3rd on the team in tackles, 2nd in pass breakups. Brandon Wright and Zion Young don't have massive numbers, but they're 2 of their best edge guys this season. Justin White is a rotational defensive back, and that's on top of Chris Bogle, their highly rated transfer from Florida, is out with an injury. They have gotten Xavier Henderson and Jacob Slade, probably their 2 best defenders, back from injury the last couple of weeks. But that's not a good thing for a team that's struggled to stop people regardless. So Illinois is not only getting an underwhelming team, potentially a distracted team, but a shorthanded Michigan State team.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This Michigan State defense wasn't great with those guys, or particularly good with those guys. And it so happens, especially when you look at some of those positions, the things that Michigan State doesn't do well defensively, which, yes, in fairness, is probably most things, but particularly stopping the run, Illinois does really well. Now you're losing depth on that defensive front, and Illinois has talked. They're proud of their ability, Jeremy, to go in there and to your point, or our point from earlier, in that third quarter, in that fourth quarter to just wear you down. Like they're okay with doing that. Now you're taking bodies out of that rotation and starters and productive players. That's significant. I mean, and it was an ugly scene, by the way, in Ann Arbor. That was tough. I mean, it was horrible. But yeah, man, it's interesting. It's why I don't know that this is going to be very close.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Illinois, number one in the Big Ten in rushing defense during conference play. They are out of conference play, but they're allowing 58 rushing yards per game during Big Ten play. And that's to Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska. Michigan State is number 13 during conference play in rushing offense, 56 yards per game. So, yeah, probably not going to go too well there. Illinois, number 2 in the Big Ten in rushing offense during Big Ten play. Again, great defenses they've kind of gone up against are traditionally good defenses. 192 rushing yards per game they're averaging during conference play. Michigan State is allowing the most rushing yards during conference play at 216. We'll get to some concerns that Michigan State can pose to Illinois. That bodes incredibly well for Illinois. They should own the trenches. Now, Jacob Slade is back. He's really good, was great last year, still coming back from injury. But Illinois has such an advantage in the rushing game.
Yeah, which I know we touched on it earlier, but what does that mean for Josh McCray, who has practice this week? Brett Bielema said Chase Brown's got a class on Wednesday, left practice a little early to attend that class. Josh McCray got the ones. I've always kind of thought, like, especially when you have someone like Josh who's coming back, and I thought Nebraska did fit this mold too. Like, I think Brett Bielema knows, like, he's smart about where Josh could have success. And maybe I said this last week. Like, you put a team that's depleted up front, that doesn't stop the run very well anyway. Like, that's enough to get your guy doing the little shoulder roll thing here. If you can have him come in against a defense that struggles to stop the run and put up numbers, like, that's an interesting part of this. I don't think it has to just be Chase Brown. I think, in fact, Jeremy, the game plan could be very similar to what you and I and everyone else watching Lincoln, where you don't have to stretch much. You can just rely on the run, take the short passes, and get the heck to Purdue with a chance to win the West.
Yeah, and I've been looking at the latest weather reports here, Joey, and if it's not going to be wet during the game, it's going to be damp because it's supposed to rain at least Saturday morning, but it's supposed to be very, very windy. 25 miles an hour is the average that I saw, which certainly is going to mess up the kicking game. But which team is the team that needs to pass more? It's Michigan State, right? And they got some talented passers. We'll get to here, passing options here. We'll talk about that here in a second. That seems to play in Illinois' hands. This has been a phenomenal weather year for Illinois football and college football in general in the Midwest. This one could get sloppy. And again, as long as Illinois doesn't fumble the ball 4 times, this seems to play into their hands.
It does. I will say, just because I like the chaos of it, I was kind of hoping this was going to be like the Purdue monsoon from 2019. I think it would have been fun to watch.
I'd rather not have a 4-hour lightning delay. I'd rather.
Yeah. Watching our friends from Iowa cover that earlier this year looked pretty miserable. But yeah, I mean, weather's been good. It sounds kind of stupid to say like a weather, because like Illinois is a good team and you don't have to worry about weather as much anymore.
Weather outside is weather.
Oh God.
Put up my Christmas lights today, by the way. November 3rd.
I don't even have a tree.
That's okay. You're single man, kind of.
I don't even have Christmas
I'm
lights.
Personalized, we kind of
don't have a tree. What a life.
It was 70 degrees out. The wife asked. I was like, sure, let's do it. We're not going to flip them on until Thanksgiving night, but I would have put them on a little earlier. Why not?
What are you just gonna like wait? Like maybe she's asleep. You just turn them on to get like the dad feel of seeing your pride and joy turned on.
There is something about it, Joey. Like I don't love doing those things. Like I am not the handy guy. Like surprise. I'm not a handy guy. I write for a living. Very, very white collar over here. But turning those on, or it's like after you're done mowing the lawn. It's just you feel accomplished. You feel a little bit like a man when you put those lights on. It just goes on. You're like, yep, I did that. That was really difficult. I did that.
You must not know the thrill of throwing 7 touchdowns in a game in Madden and then kicking your feet up and knowing what you've accomplished that day. I hope one day you find that. Maybe I'll take an Xbox to the bowl game. I will.
If
And
I'm
just sit
lucky,
there.
I'm lucky I'll find that joy someday, Joey.
Boy, I hope you sure do. And to the point, yes, the thing Michigan State does well, the weather could impact, and I think I don't know that Illinois has to stretch the field, Jeremy. I honestly don't know this is going to play out much differently than it did in
Entertain
Lincoln.
me. Throw it deep.
Why?
I agree.
Well, we just talked about. I know you're joking, but we just talked about this. You don't have to just win the freaking game.
I'm
think it's
talking.
going to
I'm
play out.
talking. I'm talking to like the 2% of people that actually complained about that. So sorry to play to the lowest common denominator.
I hope you get roasted for that. Seriously, do you think it's going to be that different than what it was in Lincoln?
No, I think it's the exact same kind of team. Peyton Thorne might be a little bit smarter with his decision making.
Then you have to assume he's going to play the whole game too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you go in assuming that.
Yeah, Casey Thompson's really talented, and Trey Palmer's really talented. But here's my concern: is these are probably, sometimes you hear these coaches, before the week, it sounds like they're playing the greatest team ever. I do think Ryan Walters is being truthful when he says this is the best group of wide receivers we played all year. Because Jaden Reed, we all know what he can do. Like when he became a transfer from Western Michigan, a kid from Naperville, it's like Illinois needs that kind of kid. They need that kind of dynamic wide receiver, a little smaller, but just makes great contested catches, can do so much after the catch. Just an NFL kind of slot receiver. Was an All-American last year. Almost a surprise he came back. But put on Keon Coleman's film. Man, Illinois has not played a 6'4", 230, go up and get it great athlete. Like he looks like a future very high draft pick. So I do think he gives you something different that like Trey Palmer's not that big and that like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of, I guess, in the news, Joey, good news for me, maybe not so much for you. He reminds you a little bit of Chase Claypool, like the way he can make plays on the ball. Sorry.
Come on, man. Yeah, I think Trey Palmer is the best receiver Illinois has seen. I think that will still stand to be the case on Sunday, where after this game. But this is the best duo that Illinois has seen all year, which, not to spoil what, I don't know what's going to post first. I don't care. Already halfway through the conversation. Taz Nicholson. I think Taz Nicholson has played good ball, and I don't think that's really debatable. It's a good test for him because there's going to be more asked of him in 7 games from now when he's back. But I mean, it's a good test to see kind of how he stacks up. And look, I think we have to acknowledge, like after the Trey Palmer deal, I think this secondary, not that they ever lacked confidence, but I mean, you got to be really understanding who you are as a secondary. That's really dang good.
I'm not saying I'm going to say Michigan State's going to win those battles, right? Because why would you at this point? But it's a different thing. Like, and they are good. Like those wide receivers are very good. That said, it has not amounted to anything during Big Ten play, except for the Wisconsin game. The Wisconsin game, they were able to score. Keon Coleman had a good game. Jaden Reed had a fantastic game. Jaden Reed has been banged up early in the year and now seems like he's getting healthy. And Trey Mosley is kind of a veteran guy, possession guy that can move the chain. So it's a deeper, talented receiver group. But if Illinois can stop the run and you can get pressure on Peyton Thorne, which Illinois has done all year, I think it can be the same results you got against Nebraska. Yeah, they're going to get a few. But can they score points? 20-something points against Illinois? I don't think so.
They may even get a couple, long broken cover. We saw it against Indiana, right? I think there might be some of that. I think Daniel Barker, obviously, we haven't brought him up yet. Interesting. Jeremy is interesting because we saw Nebraska try to put some of those linebackers in coverage conflicts last week and have some success doing that. We know Daniel Barker is a really good football player. Numbers haven't jumped off the page. Michigan State's had a couple nice games, but I'll be curious if Michigan State tries to get him in some of those conflicts with some linebackers and take advantage of that.
Sidney Brown on him, right?
You'd think.
Sidney Brown's been covering a lot of tight ends, but yeah, I mean, getting those linebackers in conflict with tight ends, multiple tight ends and running backs, like that'll be interesting to see how Illinois handles that. But, somebody tweeted at us like no score prediction. I guess I'll throw it out here because we do have it on our website, but I'm going 24-7. I repping the company here.
What a good company, man, this guy.
I don't think Illinois is going to have to score that much. I do think the conditions are going to play a role here. I think Illinois is going to have the ball for 35 plus minutes. I think it's going to be a really good thing for them.
I went 31-10, and I don't know, that feels a little high. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 28-10 type deal, because kicking it is going to be the most favorable thing. You wouldn't think with the winds going that way.
Griffin can do anything now after a couple weeks off.
Yeah. I think the big point, like you and I both think, one, I think you think this, 17.5 is a big spread for a Big Ten football game.
Sure is.
And two, I think we both think Illinois is going to cover it.
Yeah, I had them covering earlier. If it's 17.5 now, I have them at 17. I wouldn't bet that number. Like I think it opened at 12 or 11, I would have bet Illinois over there. But yeah,
that's a huge number. I think I saw someone post it's the biggest since Rutgers in 19, and 19 Rutgers was yuck.
If the over under is still 41.5, I'd take under.
Yeah, I guess I would too. Boy, I'm not good at math. I really hope. It's really, again, opened up with this. This was a game, Jeremy, when game by game is like, nope, not going to happen. Like it's really, and again, that's how seasons play out. Not usually like this for Illinois. Like the nope games for Illinois usually remain nope games until November. But man, what a fall for Michigan State this season, and just a huge rise for Illinois.
Yeah, let me get back to that because I've been asked about that a couple times. We got to do our picks to click. Who won last week? Do we both win the defensive one? Because you had Devin Witherspoon and Quan Martin, who were awesome. But I had Seth Coleman, who also was awesome. And that was kind of a bolder pick, wasn't it? I mean, Seth Coleman made the play that changed the game, but Devin Witherspoon and Quan Martin held the guy, Trey Palmer, to one catch for 1 yard.
He had no catches against those two.
I think we both win.
My weekly tradition is the mental gymnastics you take to try to talk yourself into a pick to click win. I love it. It was an underrated pick.
I think we both win. I think we should both win that one. Because that play changed the game.
It did.
He had many other great plays too. Like you could have picked anybody on the defense and probably won that. Except for maybe the linebackers. Yeah.
Offensively, I did not win. I had Josh McCray.
I had Pat Bryant, didn't have a catch. So
we did not win at all.
Both lose and we both win. How about that?
Okay. All right. That's fine.
All right. Who are you picking to click on this one?
You want to start with offense or defense?
Let's go offense.
Okay. So we're still in the non-Chase Brown category. God, I want to go back to McCray, but I can't.
I'm taking him. Josh McCray.
Damn it.
Touchdown. He's going to get a touchdown.
All right. I said it, Jeremy. I really do think like this is, I think he would have done it last week, but Bielema is smart, man. I think he knows getting McCray back and to say, hey, your first game, you had 8, 9, 10 carries, 65 yards and a score. Welcome back. Like, get a little buzz. I can't take him.
I will give you Chase Brown, but he has to go over 150 yards to win.
Ooh. Well, okay, so what if he goes over 150 yards? How are you going to talk yourself into Josh McCray winning next week?
Like if Josh McCray gets a touchdown, I win. If Chase Brown gets over 150, you win.
So because we just saw this in Lincoln, none of us want to get involved with the passing attack pick to click here.
I mean, Isaiah Williams is probably a good fit because he gets 10 touches a game.
Yeah, I'll take the Chase Brown thing. If he goes over 150, there's no touchdown requirements here, right? I think he'll get one. Okay, great. What a great pick to click.
There you go.
Going with the running backs.
So
who would have thought we would both take running backs in the Brett Bielema team, which isn't the most fair because they are much more effective passing attack.
Defense. Can I take my guy that I have in our preview?
Yeah.
Taz Nicholson.
Okay, let's put it out there.
Taz has to step up.
What's it look like? What does a win for him look like?
PFF, like what would it look like? That's a great question. 70 plus grade in PFF. Targets, they get completions on like half of them or under. You know what I mean? Like an NFL rating under 80.
But probably no more than I would say. Like if he allows like 115 pass yards, probably no more.
Yeah, because I'm not like predicting him to have Devin Witherspoon game, but I just think he's such a key player here, given the depth they have at wide receiver and the 2 stars they have there. So that's big. I should probably take a guy up front because Michigan State's offensive line stinks.
What a transition. You're good at this. You could have had a future in radio one day, Jeremy. Johnny Newton. Like he's been quieter than the 9 pressures against Indiana. I just think he's on it, dude. He is playing really good ball. I think he's going to have a chance to get some pressures. Maybe I should have taken someone on the edge. I guess for him to win, what's that look like? 6, 7 quarterback pressures, maybe a half a sack and a full TFL.
If Johnny Newton has a normal game, you probably win this one.
Yeah, I know. Like you're saying that, it's like, oh dang. That front, that's a fierce group, dude. I thought he had the best quote in the defense story. I said, where's that edge come from? He said, we feel like when people get on the field with us, it's disrespectful. And I was like, my God.
It's a phenomenal quote. Like,
God.
I guess you could have that in your normal daily life, right? Like you and I go in there and be like, we're going to crush this, right? We're going to crush this coverage. But to actually do it in something you have to do physically, like that is.
There's almost nothing physically that I would say that for.
Like this man disrespects me by standing next to me in the sandwich shop. I could just take this guy.
Dude, what an awesome, like, I long to have that mindset in anything that requires physicality.
Good for him. Good for him.
And you know what? He's backed it up. That's what Keith Randall said. He goes, you know what? You can talk. If you can't really talk, you don't back it up. They do.
Unless Devin Witherspoon, he does it anyway.
That's what Keith said. And as a matter of fact,
he also happens to back it up.
How many times has he not backed it up this year?
His entire career, man. He's an underdog playing as a freshman. I remember we had him as like our freshman of the year for Illinois back in 2019.
That's right. You did.
It was great, man.
I still remember it was probably he arrived maybe like the 3rd day they'd already gone through the acclimation period. So they could have pads, and here's skinny Devin Witherspoon. And if I'm remembering correctly, he's in like basketball shorts and an Illinois shirt, but he had the helmet on. It looked hysterical because he was not a very big guy, and he had the helmet on. And I'm like, what? Yeah. What is going on here? Was it? Hey, Lovie Smith found some dudes, and
it's amazing. You know, another freshman DB came in that class, Marquez Beeson.
That's right. He did.
Here's Devin Witherspoon doing what he's doing, man.
About to get paid.
Yeah, big time. All right. Anything else left on this game, this matchup, Joey?
Help me with some over-unders real quick. Set Illinois rushing yards and Michigan State rushing yards.
I think Michigan State should be 56.5.
Think so too.
That's about the averages of both of them, both sides of the ball during Big Ten play.
I don't want to spoil because I don't know what I'm going to go with. Any other time, I'd be like, of course you would take the over there, right? Like, just that is not a lot of rushing yards.
And Illinois rushing yards, 199.5.
That's going to require some thinking.
Just Chase will probably get you, like we were talking about, 150. Tommy DeVito can get you like 30. And if Josh McCray's healthy, trying to whittle away a game late in the game, especially on a windy day, they're going to run the ball a lot. They're probably going to run the ball 50 times. So
setting up the only interest, I say the only interest, there's all sorts of sub storylines. The fact that Illinois has to beat Michigan State to go in with a win and win the West game at home on senior day is like it's a perfect script, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Not to give away. I mean, honestly, if you cover this team and you miss that angle, for shame. But like that's wow.
Yeah, it's amazing they could be 8-1 if they take care of business here, which I just have very little doubts they do based on what they've done here recently.
Can we get into that real quick? Because I'm writing about that.
Such a workmanlike business like last few weeks. Iowa, they overcame adversity, right? But these last two games, because Minnesota we still thought was pretty good going into this. And I think they're a solid Big Ten team. But the way they just dominated that game, overcame a little adversity with that kickoff return and touchdown. And then Nebraska just went in there and it was like, okay, overcome adversity early, but there's never any doubt. Like, I didn't even really have much doubt when Minnesota went up that Illinois was going to win that game. So I just think you should be very confident in Illinois, the way it's playing, the way it's coached, the way it's led by its players, and the way they're executing.
Yeah, I know just with everything going on in Michigan State, like we've seen people online, like, could this be a trap game? I don't think Brett, like, it sounds stupid. I don't think Brett Bielema even allows that thought to creep in. And frankly, what Brett Bielema thinks, it does not take long for the entire room, the entire building to think like that.
He's so good at attacking that stuff. Like, he's done it this week. Like, he told us, he presents them with all the things that are being said about them because he wants to give them the message to take home about it. He doesn't just let it fester, say, oh, these guys will handle it. No, he goes, this is the message. Here's what we need to focus on. So I think that's really important to it, especially with 18 to 24-year-olds or whatever they are,
who have never experienced this before.
Yeah. To address those things. Here's how you need to think about it. Here's what we need to focus on. It's great that you're getting some of this publicity, but it don't matter if we lose to Michigan State. So we need to lock in and focus on how we're going to defend Keon Coleman, right? Like, he's so good at that. And that wasn't happening in the previous administration.
Yeah. And can Illinois really be like just where this program has been? They're not a team that should have to fear a trap game because they've been the team so often trapping other opponents. Like, I just don't know that, like, where this, like, how can Alex Palczewski, who's been there forever, who I don't think I'm wrong, he's still got a below 500 record as a college athlete. Like, how could you even think like something's a trap game? I just don't see how this team now maybe in 4 or 5 years if they continue to do this, like maybe that could be a case. I don't know that Brett Bielema would allow it. I just think it's too early to think teams could, like a team like Illinois, who's really good, could take anyone for granted because they've been on the other side of that.
The other thing that Brett Bielema does, he still treats them like an underdog. It's us against the world. It's us against everybody. That's what he keeps saying to everybody. Like, this team still feels like the underdog, and kudos to them for that because they play like it.
I like to picture him and like Brad Underwood on the phone. It's like midnight, and they're just talking like, "How can we do this?" Because Brad Underwood does the same thing. There's maybe, do you think when Brad read that, he just like one single tear rolled from his face? It's like, you know what? They get it over there.
I think he just dropped an F-bomb followed by a yeah.
So somewhere one single tear rolled from Alex Palczewski's face when he realized someone else said that too.
All right. I think we say it. Look, I think Illinois should win this game and set up what is the biggest game for the program since the Rose Bowl.
There we go. Okay. My last thing here. Every week you see somewhere like, this is the biggest game. Okay. It's a big game because Illinois football is in the atmosphere of big games right now, and they're not falling out of that this season. This is different, right? Like, this is the biggest game since Wisconsin, or probably maybe Iowa, but definitely Wisconsin.
You talking about Purdue, the Purdue game?
Yes, yeah, not Michigan State.
Yeah, because you could lose to Michigan State, still beat Purdue, and beat Northwestern and clinch, right? Like, you could still do that. The Purdue game is different because it's a championship game berth. It's something they've never done before.
And the road is really hard if you lose.
Yeah, and if you, because Purdue's got an easy schedule after that, Northwestern, Indiana. So yeah, you need to win that game regardless of what happens against Michigan State. And then, yes, that sets up the next biggest game, which would be Michigan. We'd be talking about like, but there's nothing to lose there. Like, there's something to lose if you lose to Purdue, right? Like, there's really not much to lose to Michigan when you're going to be a double-digit underdog to a top 5 team on the road, even if you're a top 10 team.
Yeah, 100%. I get it because this is also new. Like, it's like every week, like, it's the biggest game. It's not. Purdue is. Maybe I'm just a sucker for the storylines, but like, story-wise, what it means to your program, the birth, that is It's a huge game. Should have a good crowd. Senior day. Alex Palczewski's fifth at Illinois. Is only his third, I think, as long as my math is right. So it's a big one, man. You got to take care of business against Michigan State to make it into that big of a game. Because if you lose to Michigan State, I think you would still feel good, but like you can just shut the door on November 12th. It's crazy.
All right, Joey. Brett Bielema said after the Nebraska game, in the next 24 hours, they should get a commitment. Maybe they did. It hasn't been announced. It's been 135 hours, I think.
Is that what you're doing the math for? Yeah, you're way better at math than I am.
What do you think? I mean, it's clear they got a commitment, right? It's just not out there.
Yeah, I think they.
And they did a great job of not letting it leak out there.
Yeah, I get it, man. Like, Brett, here's the thing, and I don't think we've gotten a chance to say this yet. I know Brett Bielema is very calculated in everything he says from the podium. He corrected me today by saying burn a red shirt when the real term that he would like to use is maximize an opportunity. Like little things like that. Yeah. Brett Bielema, like he's very calculated up there. But I don't think he went into that press conference at Minnesota or Nebraska expecting to say that, because he was walking off the dais. I guess it's not necessarily a podium.
I was like, I got one more. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, great. And we're all like,
Werner guy.
Freaking Werner got another one. Good Lord. And then he brought it up into this conversation. But if Brett Bielema really wanted to say that, he's working that sucker into the opening statement without a doubt, or at least the first like two questions. And I don't know that he like spoiled any moment or anything, but I don't know that like it was his intent to say it there. Does that ultimately matter? I don't know, but I just think it's interesting because usually if Brett Bielema wants to say something, it's clear.
So of course we dig on this, right? Like to see
sure.
My guy, because he mentioned JUCOs in the conversation, but then when you listen back to it, it might not have been like. So my first thought was Keyshawn Blackstock, who took an official visit. Digging more into it, he's planning on taking more official visits, like probably all 5. So he's taking an official visit to Illinois, but he's in the middle of a season. Probably wants to take 4 more, so probably closer to December. Malik Elzy, don't think that's going to be done quite yet. I think Illinois is in a good spot right now, but I don't think that's imminent. The guy I think you feel great about is the guy visiting this weekend for an official, and that's Kent State commitment, a 3-star edge rusher, Maverick Gracio out of Florida, plays for the infamous Jack Daniels down at Cardinal Newman in West Palm Beach. Really good edge rusher. And even our guy, Andrew Ivan, said, I'm surprised this guy was committed to Kent State when I went back and kind of did an audit of Florida. Certainly thinks he's a Power 5 prospect. Having a huge year, 20 tackles for loss, 17 sacks, and just another very explosive, bigger, 6'3", 230 pounds at outside linebacker. Him and Calvin Smith, you had that to, along with Pat Farrell, who I think is a different kind of player, different kind of outside linebacker. You add that to what you already have with Gabe Akis, Jared Beatty, Alec Bryant. I'm thinking long-term here. Seth Coleman certainly has 2 years of eligibility left. I don't know if he'll reach that. That's a heck of an outside linebacker room that Kevin Kane is starting to build.
Yeah, it was good before like Maverick Gracio's name started surfacing around, but that's the one that seems to be moving pretty quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Kent State
visit. Yeah.
Taking the official visit. Yeah, I don't think anyone would be surprised if he would commit.
Yeah, and no, we don't know if that's who Brett Bielema was referring to, but we're now in the middle of or early December, I should say, or November. Goodness, the list is smaller, right? Like unless it's somebody from like Brett Bielema, and I think they're very aware of. If we offer, you've seen it, they offer, and then a slew of other offers come in. So unless there's somebody just completely off the radar, but I don't know that that's the case.
Is it the Sidney Brown here?
Yeah. So unless it's something like, if it's someone like that, and but otherwise you just look at the targets they have, and
let's go down Jair Hill.
Yeah,
Jair Hill seems like he's taking his time. Was going to visit Michigan again. Malik Elzy. said he might take more visits. So that's what we told our guy, Ryan Easterling. Maverick Gracio, Keyshawn Blackstock, Xavier Miller, the Ole Miss commit, JUCO offensive lineman. They've looked at a couple other JUCO offensive linemen. That's about it, right? When we talk about prep and JUCO targets that we know as of this moment.
That's what I'm saying. So like if you're trying to,
I would imagine we name the guy. Like it's probably gonna be one of those guys. I just don't know which one.
Yeah, I don't either. But
Maverick Gracio would be my highest confidence, right? I mean, that's just obvious.
Just look at the timeline.
Yeah,
the timeline screams it. Will this commitment, this mystery man commitment, happen before? I think it's next week. It's Thursday, I suppose. Illinois basketball first signing period.
See, I don't know because I expect
I don't know who it is.
I expect Gracio to be committed by then, but is he the guy? I don't know. It's fantastic.
I don't know.
It's great. A little tease to throw out there to people, and then they spend a week talking about it, but they're talking about adding to your program. So it's genius marketing again, from Brett Bielema, even if he wasn't thinking about it in the moment.
That was just my way of weaving into that. Holy crap. Like usually like early basketball signing period, we're like, what? And now it's like, wait a minute, there's still football. I know it made that point a lot, but that's next week, by the way. I just recently learned.
Yeah. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, Amani Hansberry, Zachary Perrin.
Well, as I was made very clear to me in an uncomfortable question in a press conference with Brad Underwood, they cannot talk about him, which would require some sort of signature from the young man again. So we'll see. Yeah, it's interesting.
All right. Great stuff. Thank you as always for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Follow our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Give us a rating review if you're on Apple. Check us out on YouTube. You can see our ugly mugs on YouTube. Also Jay Lehman, Mike Latulippe, Derek Piper. We're going to get Piper back on the pod after the Eastern Illinois game. We're going to have a Latulippe pod here on Friday. So kind of take you into your weekend, talking a little hoops after the exhibition game. I still got to dig into that so I can be well informed on it. But thank you for following us on YouTube. We appreciate that. And you can go a VIP at Illini Inquirer as always. Alan True, a new VIP crystal ball pick is in today. So you can check that out. Just $1 for your first month at Illini Inquirer. Thanks for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.